working pensioners in the United States have decreased by more than 3 million in a few years. Apparently, sociologists summarized, the epidemic did its job, and older people began to ask themselves more often, is it necessary to work without a break for some extra dollars? If tomorrow, maybe, coronavirus or some other disease will send me to the other side of the world? According to a recent study by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, the number of Americans planning to work after moving into the respected category of senior citizen has dropped to a record low. of 32.9%. But before we get started, subscribe to our channel, like and share the video on social media. Today we will tell you how the US has come up with a trick to get a good pension and why it can be profitable to elegantly impoverish. Usually, in peacetime, financial advisors recommend that residents of the states continue working until at least 70 years old, then you can count on the maximum amount of retirement pension. And if you have managed to accumulate some savings in addition, you will not be lost. Now, although it is a time of peace, but many people do not work up not only to the cherished 70 years, but also just to the full retirement age, which, depending on the year of birth, is in the US from 65 to 67 and more. More and more Americans are taking early retirement at age 62, losing at least a quarter of their retirement benefits. But there are reasons for this decision. The average Social Security retirement pension for those U.S. citizens who worked to full retirement age was $1,657 a month. For those who took early retirement at age 62, it was $1,130. Is it possible to live on this money? You will answer this question yourself if you compare the above figures with the average rent, about $1,100 per month. So how do American retirees make ends meet? Somehow. One option is to have a service pension from the company where you worked for a long time, in addition to the state, social insurance. However, only a few people have this option, those who are lucky enough to work in government agencies or large corporations like Boeing, Ford, General Electric. You can also stay afloat if you have solid pension savings in addition to your social insurance pension. Many American companies create 401k pension plans for their employees, in which both the employee and the employer contribute money, sometimes in a 1-to-1 ratio, sometimes in some other proportion. In addition, people put money into targeted retirement time deposits and other similar accounts that can be purchased from financial institutions. All money invested in pension savings is tax deductible, a good incentive to save for old age. Pension savings cannot be touched before you turn 59 and a half, otherwise you will have to pay a penalty. It's a good idea, but not everyone can afford it. Tens of millions of low-wage U.S. citizens live from paycheck to paycheck, saving nothing at all. A report released by the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities found that only half of pre-retirement Americans, ages 55 to 64, own target retirement contributions. The same report said that on average, Americans have $134,000 sitting in retirement accounts. Again, let's ask ourselves, is that a lot or a little? Comparing it to most countries in the world, it may seem like a lot, but for America, hardly. According to calculations by Fidelity Investments, a retiring couple should have at least $295,000. And that amount doesn't include fees for a possible stay in a nursing home, which is exorbitantly expensive. On top of that, the estimate is from last year. Over the past year, the inflationary spiral has unwound in the U.S. to 6%, in connection with which next year is expected to index social insurance pensions for old age and disability, at least by 5.8%. And in general, in order for a married couple not to be in need and not be forced to cut costs after retirement, they should have savings of $1.5 million. Very few people manage to do that. Fidelity Investments accumulation arithmetic for average life expectancy after retirement gives men $7,500 per year and women 7% less, since they live longer. The same amount is divided by more years. This arithmetic assumes that they'll start running their hand into their savings at age 65 and that they won't take an early, reduced retirement at 62. Some won't leave at 62 or 70 and will work right up until they are carried forward if they don't get laid off early, even if the retirement budget allows for a well-deserved vacation. Americans are textbook workaholics. They are raised that way from infancy. In addition, the majority of American retirees are single people who see their adult children and grandchildren only at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Others continue to work past retirement age not out of choice, but out of necessity, otherwise it is impossible to make ends meet. According to rough estimates, 38 million Americans live below the official poverty line, and more than 12 million more people are the so-called working poor. For reference, the U.S. population is more than 333 million. These people have it the worst. Their wages do not reach the real subsistence level but are considered too high to receive social assistance from the state. But there is a third category of American retirees, those who purposefully seek to impoverish themselves and retire as early as possible with minimal income and assets. Why? To understand this, let's continue our calculations. The average monthly pension of $1,657 annualized is $19,884. Let's add to that figure the average savings income of $7,500 per year. That comes out to $27,384 per year. The federally set official poverty line in 2023 is $14,880 per person. More often than not, the income of a retiree or for retirees exceeds these absolutely poverty income thresholds by American standards. But is that a good thing? Exceeding poverty thresholds denies low-income people the opportunity to receive social assistance for the poor. Although it is fair to say that there are all sorts of options, they are very different in different U.S. states, for housing, food aid, and subsidized medicine, including for those who, although they do not live below the poverty line, but have not risen above it. In general, to live a normal life in retirement in America, one must be either a wealthy individual with serious savings, or a broke beggar who shows the state his empty hands and asks it for help. In light of this dilemma, many of those who fall between two stools go to a financial advisor at retirement age, and the advisor says with a sigh, "I'm going to recommend the elegant impoverishment option for you, sir. You need to get rid of your assets, minimize your income, and then you'll be fine." It is not easy to become indigent. An applicant for this status must show Social Security officials that he or she has absolutely minimal income, no significant savings, and no other assets, real estate, expensive cars, jewelry. Then it will be possible to qualify for subsidized housing, food aid, a supplement for the poor to the pension, free medicines, free health insurance for the poor, etc. You can still own your own home, if that is your residence and only real estate. You can have one modest car. You can put your assets into a trust to be managed by someone else. You can pay off all your mortgage, car loan, and credit card debts in full to reduce your savings. You can pay for funeral expenses in advance and buy a cemetery space. You can pay a life annuity for your spouse. You can pay in advance for in-home care for you. Of course, it is not always possible to elegantly impoverish without breaking the law. Many find themselves in a dilemma of obeying the law or surviving, and here no financial advisor will not take the choice of one side or the other. You have to choose for yourself. Someone wants to sleep well, someone wants to live decently, and someone chooses the third option, to leave the U.S. in some cheap country where the most modest American pension can live quite well. But there are still plenty of legal ways to live on a pension in the U.S. without being a millionaire. Senior citizens, for example, often use credit on a large scale, accumulate large credit card debt, take out bank loans. Often they know that they will not pay back these debts. Their creditors have to write off the debts at a loss after the debtor dies. But the financial industry has perverse incentives for lending. They push loans to anyone at high interest rates, and then for this pushing, they get bonuses and promotions. One way or another, American retirees survive, and mostly quite well. According to the U.S. Department of Labor's Bureau of Labor Statistics, people 65 and older spend an average of $48,106 a year, or $4,008 a month. That's below the U.S. average spending figure of $61,749 per year, or $5,146 per month. When it comes to the distribution of spending, we should start with spending on housing, paying the mortgage on a house or rent, property taxes and insurance, operating expenses, and other things. In 2021, Americans over 65 spent an average of $4,847 per year on these expenses. To that, add heating, electricity, telephone, etc. expenses. Another $3,743 per year. Other expenses, related to housing, are another $1,219 per year. It should be taken into account that these average figures are made up of very different values. In America, there are many places where you can live very cheaply, but you hardly want to live there, and there are expensive coastal areas of California, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. Americans spend a lot on short and long-distance travel. An average of $10,160 a year is spent on transportation costs. Those over 65 spend considerably less, $6,618 per year. But in the area of medical expenses, retirees are ahead of the average citizen. If the average American spends on healthcare, doctors, hospitals, medicines, $5,204 a year, then people of retirement age $6,719 a year. As for food, at home and away from home, here retirees lag behind the average American statistics. If the average U.S. resident consumes food for the amount of $7,923 per year, the pensioner $6,303 per year, $525 per month. The older a person is, the less they spend on food. In terms of entertainment spending, American retirees are quite a bit behind younger people. The national average is $2,482 per year, while a retiree's spending on museums, theaters, movies, and hobbies is $2,282 per year. And the main thing, of course, is not the retiree's itemized expenses, but his or her life expectancy, so that there will be time to spend money, big or small. According to World Health Organization statistics, the United States ranks 46th in the world in life expectancy, 78.4 years. Not an honorable place, but better than most countries in the world. And another interesting statistical comparison. The life expectancy gap between women and men, in favor of women, in the US is 1.8 years. Guys, if you liked our video, but you haven't subscribed to us yet, subscribe right now and post the video on social networks. There will be a lot of interesting things in the next episodes. See you soon. Bye.